Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle and thank you very much for joining us at www.sonic-cinema.com. Earlier this year, I did interviews with a couple of filmmakers whom I've known for a long time and whose recent film had just been limited released in theaters as well as released on video on demand. And another filmmaker whom I've known for a long time has a film of theirs that is coming on video on demand this coming Tuesday, September 13th. The movie is Dark Exorcism, although when I reviewed it, it was going by the name In the Dark. And it was my pleasure to talk to the writer-director of the film for a few minutes about where he got his inspiration as a filmmaker, as well as how he approached Dark Exorcism, coming from a storytelling place that was very much not in the typical horror tradition. So please enjoy my interview with writer-director David Spaltro. Over the years, I've had many filmmakers ask me to take a look at their films and review them for Sonic Cinema. One such filmmaker is David Spaltro out of New York City. The films I've reviewed of his over the years are Around, Things I Don't Understand, and his latest, which is called Dark Exorcism, although when I reviewed it, it was going by the title In the Dark. Dark Exorcism is about to be released on video on demand on Tuesday, September 13th, and I'm very pleased to have the writer and director of the film with me today. Please welcome David Spaltro.
Hey, man. Really nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. It's great to hear your voice. It's been a while. We've actually known each other for a long time. I think I first got your email about wanting Around reviewed in 2008. So yeah, it's good to.
Yeah, you were one of the first reviews I think we ever got.
Yeah, so it's good to finally have a voice to go with the email. So one of the first things.
Yeah, the history.
So one of the first things I wanted to ask you, and standard question, but I figured, but it's always a good one to start with when it comes to creative people and actors, filmmakers, what have you. What was it that led you to acting and filmmaking?
I think I've always been interested in storytelling. When I was a little kid, I wanted to get into comic books and illustration. So I always had like an interest in spinning stories, and I did writing, and I think I gravitated towards filmmaking because I really like the collaboration. Like as a director, as a filmmaker, you get to work not just, you're not just sitting with a piece of paper or some pencils. You get to work with everybody. You get to work with the actors. You get to work with the DP and all the different crew members. And so for me, I'm a very social people person. So being able to work with all these different talented artists on the same project, and everybody brings what they bring, and you kind of navigate it. It's always been really appealing to me. So it's kind of the perfect fit for me.
What type of comic books and stories really interested you when you were younger, or even now?
All kinds. I went through different phases. I started out, my father would bring me home Batman and Marvel. So I definitely had the superhero background and all the different, and then I moved on to things like Frank Miller's Daredevil run and Alan Moore, and then eventually got into like more independent stuff like Daniel Close and all the different Fantagraphic stuff, Peter Bagg. The idea of visual storytelling with comics, not just superhero epic kind of stuff, but the idea that like you had the words, but like the mixture of that with the images kind of always appealed to me. They're in a very big way storyboards. So I think that kind of always was, leading me to what I eventually do now in that respect as a storyteller.
When did you first start acting and directing?
In high school, I guess the final thing that probably led me to it is I got involved with the drama club. And I started out the drama teacher. I was always getting into like trouble, but they can only give me so many detentions. So I guess they figured I had a lot of extra creative energy to utilize. So to channel it, they sort of sent me to drama class, and she first started me out. The teacher just sort of, they didn't have a lot of money to make copies of scripts, so she'd have me like find a script at the library and like just kind of like type it up for whatever play they were going to put on, like word for word, and then she'd get like, we only have X amount of girls and guys, so this part has to be this, or you have to combine these two characters, so do that. And so she started giving me more and more allowance. So I was copying all these scripts, kind of typing it up fast, and then getting to be creatively play with it and seeing how something is kind of produced from the ground up. And then by the end of my time in high school, she sort of was like, you should just write something for us. And I did, and we got to put it up. So it was kind of like this weird, I guess, a moment where you're like, oh, okay, and all the pieces start to fit, where you're like, oh, I want to do this. I enjoy this, and I seem to have a knack for it. So it was kind of a really cool training ground / lightning rod moment.
Were there any particular playwrights, and who are the filmmakers that have inspired you most over the years?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that any playwrights. I mean, I read all kinds of plays. I was a really big fan of like Christopher Durang, and just a variety. I mean, what I loved about plays was, especially being an independent filmmaker, was that it was very minimalist. Mm-hmm. A lot of it was very character driven and dialogue driven. So like I definitely responded to that. So I was like, if nothing else, you put two people at some juncture in their life going through some drama in a small room and just have them like go at it for 20 minutes. If nothing else, you can kind of do that. So I think I always like that. And it can be just as powerful as anything cinematic. But as filmmakers, I mean, I again, the same thing with comics. You go in with growing up. I saw films with my father a lot. I worked in a video store, and I was exposed at different points in my life to all kinds of things. And I was very fortunate. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York for film school. One of my professors, who's a history professor, Gene Davis, he's a big film historian. He has crazy, or had, he passed, crazy library of film prints. And for film history, he would bring in, we would watch all these old films, his actual prints on film. So you're seeing like Murnau's Sunrise on an old scratchy film print, or you're watching Taxi Driver in 35 millimeter from that time, and a foreign film, or Rashomon, or, there was just something about that like, as I'm older now and looking back, really able to appreciate that. But that definitely had an effect on me, what images can do in terms of storytelling. So I was exposed to a lot of different people.
Are there any particular ones that really stuck out?
I think in terms of what I really like, probably my three top directors, or four top directors. You can always switch it around, but I liked Billy Wilder and Danny Boyle, because for me, what I really appreciate about their filmmaking and all their films is that they're almost kind of genreless, but you can tell it's their film. Like, yeah. Billy Wilder can go make Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, and then The Apartment, which is like my favorite film. And they're all so clearly, he wrote, it's so clearly his movie, but nowhere near are they the same film. And the same thing like Danny Boyle, he can go from Trainspotting to Slumdog Millionaire to Sunshine to Steve Jobs, one he just did, and there's an inherent visual, in the way he uses music and lights, and it's him, but they're just. And for me as a filmmaker, that's kind of what I want to do as a storyteller. I'd love to hop different genres and just tell good stories, whatever the framework would be. I would say two other filmmakers that really kind of inspired me were John Carpenter and Martin Scorsese. Carpenter, with the way he used his frame and his score, and just the kind of themes he tackled. And Scorsese, of course, he's the master in so many different ways, but one of the things that I probably most responded to was the way he used editing and music together, with the way he combined his images with the mood and Thelma Schoonmaker's editing. And it was just again, one of those like lightning rod moments where you're like, oh my God, this is what it could be. This is what you can do with it. To get that point across and be different, pump some energy into it.
Yeah, I know one of the things I loved when I first started to Scorsese myself, being a musician, is the use of music. I mean, even though he doesn't always use score, just the way he uses music to emphasize the emotions and the storytelling in his movies. And I mean, I know one of my favorite Scorsese films is still Goodfellas, and the way he uses the pop music in there is really one of the things that just completely impacts the way I watch that movie and the way that movie hits me as a film watcher.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's, it's kind of old hat. That's the thing about Scorsese too, is that so much of his stuff, uh, it, I don't know if he gets as much credit outside of the sort of film elite circles for the stuff that we kind of take for granted now, where like every filmmaker has like an eclectic pop soundtrack or long tracking shots and all these things. And, he really pioneered that technique and that we see so much of now. And it's just very influential, and nobody does it better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like, I think to a certain extent, and no, I would actually agree with you that I don't think he necessarily gets the credit he deserves. Because, I mean, you think about it, you think about the soundtracks, you think about the song soundtracks that really have impacted fans over the years. It's like you have Saturday Night Fever, and then you have like The Bodyguard, and then Pulp Fiction basically just took it to another level. And it's like, here Scorsese was doing all of this type of great stuff between that. So, Goodfellas is one of my absolute favorite soundtracks of all time. And it's like, it's
so watchable.
Yeah, it's such an amazing use of songs to really tell the story and to get into the characters' heads.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was impressed by with Dark Exorcism was how much of a 180 it was from your previous films that I had seen. And it actually does not surprise me in that respect that you mentioned Billy Wilder earlier, because, because I completely agree with you. It's you can watch any of Billy Wilder's movies and they're his movies, even if they're completely different, like Double Indemnity, Some Like It Hot, Sunset Boulevard, 1, 2, 3, just any number of films of his. What led you to go into horror with Dark Exorcism after Around and Things I Don't Understand?
It was definitely not planned. I had a few projects that I was developing that we got stuck in turnaround, and I come across an investor, this guy who basically had a certain amount of money and he wanted to make a horror film. He didn't have a script, he didn't really have an idea. And so it was this weird opportunity I had no interest at the time in doing a horror film. I didn't have anything against it. Just wasn't, it certainly wasn't in my wheelhouse. And I didn't have oh my gosh, I have this horror script in my closet that I've been meaning to do. But it was this unique opportunity, one, as a filmmaker where, very small amount of money, but basically you kind of have a blank canvas. As long as it's this amount of money and it's a horror film and I give him what he wants, kind of like an old Roger Corman kind of deal where it's like, as long as I do X, Y, Z, then it'll work out. So I was kind of driven by that. And then I, was stuck with a lot of writer's block and, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Because what am I going to do? I don't really have an idea. I don't really know what I want to do. And I just sort of was like, I went back and I think having been sent a couple of really bad horror scripts to direct that I passed on, I think I'd kind of lost sort of my appreciation for the genre and kind of, there's just so much, because kind of it's the porn of the indie world where there's an audience that comes, so people just make trash of it constantly. And I forgot how effective the genre it is, and I got to watch a lot of old classic films. I went back to John Carpenter. I watched, of course, freaking The Exorcist, but tons of different things, and read a bunch of my old favorite Stephen King, short stories, and I realized that horror is just a way to kind of you can tell stories about all kinds of things and use the genre as a metaphor and kind of almost tell it more effectively. You look at a film like The Babadook, for instance, and that's literally that filmmaker. She wanted to tell a story about postpartum depression for years and had a straight drama script, couldn't get the money for it, and she ended up telling that story far more effectively using horror and the supernatural. The same theme, same ideas, but you know what I mean? And that's something with this project, I think that's kind of what I was like, I want to tell a story about this other thing and make it about the characters and the narrative, but I want to see if I can use the horror, the tropes or the genre to do that.
Yeah, I would certainly, and I mean, you saw my review, obviously. I absolutely loved the film when I reviewed it last year, and I'm sort of like you. For a while, I got very tired, I think, or really kind of numb to the genre. And then when I started to watch some of the older movies, really start getting acquainted with some of the older movies, and you mentioned Roger Corman, another one who pops to mind that is more very much in the horror genre from the 40s is Val Lewton, who produced Cat People, I Walked with a Zombie, and a bunch of other low-budget horror film, supernatural films for RKO. And thinking about In the Dark and basically how you're describing sort of the process of getting yourself to the point to make the film really reminds me of the way Luton produced and developed the films that he made in the 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like it's one of those things where, and the other reason I took it too is and in that same respect, was as a filmmaker, the kinds of films I've done, I wanted to grow. Like I was talking about Billy Wilder and doing different genres, and doing this project, through all the hell of making a horror film with certain people, I was able to pick up skills that had I never done it, I wouldn't have, because the idea of, again, playing with visuals, soundtrack and score for a film like this or a horror film, I had no idea how much it lived and died, on that. Like I had played with music and used score in the past, but nothing, I didn't know this film worked until we had it fully mixed. It's just a completely different animal that I was like, oh my gosh, So as a filmmaker, for me in the future, whether I get to tackle this genre again or do something else, just having that kind of perspective in the back of my mind and having gone through it, and you work with music and score too and sonic stuff, it's just what that is and as a tool in a way that I never had before. So it was a really good learning experience as well.
Well, and you mentioned The Exorcist, obviously, earlier when you were talking about the types of films you watched in developing Dark Exorcism, and obviously that movie casts a long shadow over this type of film.
Yeah.
And the possession subgenre of horror. How did you approach the film without completely just saying, okay, I'm just gonna basically do exorcism-like tactics throughout the films? Because I think to a certain extent a lot of possession films you watch just sort of go into that whole, okay, well, we're gonna do like found footage, but we're gonna do The Exorcist, but it's gonna be like found footage, or we're gonna do The Exorcist, but it's sort of based on a true story, like in The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yeah.
So,
or it's a shark that's possessed, or something like that.
Yeah. So, how do you approach that without just sort of trying, how do you approach that genre without really just running the risk of just sort of reverting to formula?
I think The Exorcist. If you're going to do an exorcism film, The Exorcist is the Mount Everest in terms of quality, in terms of being, I guess, in many ways, the first. And I think you have to, at some point, too, also accept that, like, you're going to be in that shadow no matter what you do, no matter what way you tell the story. As far as when you're dealing with a possession film, you're going to, in any review or in any like, oh, The Exorcist, there's no escaping it. There was conscious efforts of, like, no priests and no spinning heads and things like that. But for me, even tackling this kind of story, it really came from when I was looking for an idea for a horror film. I'd come across, they actually reran it in the Washington Post recently, but there was an old, in 2008, a psychology paper from someone at Columbia University, the psychologist, PhD, and it was published. And it was about possession of this woman in a medical case. And it was a paper published like you would read, very dry, very matter-of-fact, detailed, about some rare disease or about, it was a medical paper. but it was talking about all this crazy stuff, and it was written so scientific, like, so again, so dryly and so scientifically, but what it was talking about was like ridiculous. And I was really enamored by that kind of, competition between the direct science and this kind of supernatural, mythological, metaphysical kind of thing. And for me, this kind of story was like, what if you, in the real world, if this was a true thing, and you had people who were dealing with medical issues or psychology issues, and this was a true case of possession, how would it go down and how would they react to it? And so that was kind of, I was drawn to that, the science versus faith, which is a lot. Again, it's funny that it's so different than my other work, and at the same time, it's very similar. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of similar themes. In some ways, it's the weird inversion of the last film I did, right down to a young Grace Folsom as the actress, afflicted with something, having philosophical conversations with a grad student in a room. You know what I mean? There's a different bent on it. So I think that kind of is how I tried to avoid the Exorcist trap, and also make it kind of religionless. You're delving in different ideas of mythology that they talk about in the film and demonic stuff, but not saying Judeo-Christian or any particular thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that struck me about the film when I watched it last year was the wealth of amount of material for women in the movie, and there are at least 4 really strong, really compelling roles for women in the movie. They're the central roles in the movie. Is that type of thing something that, and in your previous films, you'd also written strong material for women as well. Is that type of thing something that drew you to it, in addition to what you just talked about as far as the idea of science versus, this supernatural aspect? And is there someone or something in particular that inspires that type of writing from you?
I've always had that kind of bent. Outside of a conscious effort, I think, than more people should do of trying to write strong female characters and including that more. It's just, it's so organic to me that I don't know that I necessarily try. I know a lot of talented female actresses. In a purely artistically selfish way, it makes things easier almost, because that's one of the things I don't understand why they don't do more of that, because you've seen, we've seen a million Exorcism movies, but we've seen a million of the similar kinds of stories told over and over and over and remade and rebooted, and just sort of replacing the male characters, because like the film I made, you could very easily, outside of switching some pronouns, you could just very easily cast 4 males. And not changed any of the story. And again, outside of some pronouns and dialogue, maybe a few things, it would play just the same. But what makes it unique is you put the females in there and you kind of you switch it around, and it gives it a completely different perspective and energy. And for me, it's very creatively freeing, because you are kind of even more repeating yourself if it was just 2 guys that went there to check on XYZ. So for me, again, I think it's very organic, but it's also something that I kind of do push for and believe in. I think we need more of it. And it just gives it another level, and makes it more interesting, especially the dynamics of the film, where one of the themes is sort of science versus faith, and at the same time, the same way that when I realized that horror is sort of a way to kind of tell a story about something else and use the horror as a metaphor, this film is about family and about family demons and the past kind of coming back and causing those fractures until there's healing and forgiveness. And so you take those demons of what the story's really about and what really the horrible stuff that went down, and kind of make them into literal demons, and hopefully kind of use that as the juice.
Yeah. So what I do have one question before I get to the next thing I wanted to talk about a bit. Like I mentioned earlier, I watched the movie under the title In the Dark, And I think I already know the answer to the question, but my question for you is why exactly did the name end up getting changed?
I haven't had the converse. We had signed with a distributor, and they took the film and sort of, a distributor, their job is to take it and do what they hope is best to sell it, and make it as marketable as they can. So they did a recut of the trailer, which I thought was all right. They redid the poster, and they came up with a new title that it's a lot more on the nose of exactly the film. That's the only funny thing for me is the film is sort of was set up to kind of be a little bit ambiguous for the first third of exactly what kind of supernatural film it was meant to be. And by calling it Dark Exorcism, you kind of you know what you're getting. But again, I having been in this business now for a while and having done things and seeing how things are, I don't really mind. I get it, and it's not, maybe if it was something a little bit more artistically close to my heart as a piece, I might be a little bit more, what are you doing? But I get it. To me, it makes sense. And if they sell more copies or draw more people in doing it, then it's. I always say it could have been so much worse. So I'm not too. I have no issue with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the film is the same version of the film that I saw 1 year ago, right? Like nothing got cut or edited or
they
haven't.
Like there was no. Yeah, outside of changing a few titles, there's no. They didn't. I mean, that's the thing. They didn't recut the film. They didn't. They really. I'll say this about the distributor. They really. They were very happy to have it, and they've been pretty great about a lot of stuff. In compared to even past experiences that I've had with distributors. But they. No, it's the exact same film. And then I mean, at the end of the day, when you. And this is for any filmmakers who are watching this, it's always art versus commerce. Even doing this film was art versus commerce, which was like, I want to make my art, and can I retain my my sense of storyteller and grow as a storyteller, but still give what is needed in terms of if anyone can give you even a small amount of money that they have the ability to recoup it and what the market is. So. I don't. They've been great, but it's the exact same cut of the film you saw.
Well, so long as that's the case, because I did love that version of the film. But what was getting at was, so long as the cut of the film that I loved is the same cut that's being released, that's ultimately all that matters. And that's I mean, it doesn't really matter what the title is, so long as the vision that's presented is retained. That's really all I care about. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, like you said, I mean, if the title change helps get people to the film and watching the film more, that's honestly, I can live with that, because the fact of the matter is, it's like one of the things I love about watching films, like the films you send me, the films other people send me, is the fact that I feel like I'm discovering something that I wouldn't have gotten a chance to see otherwise. And it's always exciting to me to sort of follow some of these films as they go through different film festivals and releases and what have you, and just see that these films are getting out there, and hoping that filmmakers like yourself get these type of deals where it's like, my film's going to get out there, and my film's going to be available for people to watch in a way that maybe it may not have been otherwise. So I mean, that's one of the that's always exciting for me. See, because I feel like I'm kind of discovering these films before other people have a chance to, and it's always fun to see them sort of take on the life of their own when more and more people get their eyeballs watching it. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what exactly, since I reviewed the movie a year ago, I know it's been to a lot of film festivals. It's won several awards, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've gotten, this film has played a bunch of festivals. It's opened me up to a genre festival world that I hadn't been really privy to. I'd done a bunch of festivals for my other films, which was interesting, and meeting those kinds and seeing those kinds of films too for the few. I didn't get to go to as many as I usually do. But also some of the actors, the four females, they picked up a lot of honors, Grace and Fiona and Lynn, for their work, which is great because, I mean, for the amount of money we had making this film, it was like a 12-day shoot. The real special effect is not like some VFX and makeup; those are fine. It's these women who carry this movie, and I was very fortunate to have them. So yeah, we've gone to a bunch of festivals, and it's been interesting because again, I was trying to make a horror film that wasn't your typical horror film, and also never having made one before, not knowing, oh my God, does this work? Is this scary, or does this fit the genre? And not knowing how it was going to be received in general, but especially for that particular audience. And it's been nice. It feels like people seem to really dig it across the board for what it is, and also the people who are into that kind of genre stuff have accepted it and are not like, what are you doing? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So that's been kind of great too. Yeah, like that almost is like, you hope it, if nothing else, your film works as a film and it's not a complete dumpster fire, always. But to know that, your first stab at something that you had no previous experience with was also so well received by that people who love that kind of stuff. Was kind of nice.
Well, I mean, it's certainly gratifying to hear that, and I'm glad to, and I am glad to hear that it's had the success it has. It's always it's like I said, it's always fun to hear it's always fun to follow filmmakers like yourself, and as the movie sort of goes through its life on the film festival circuit or getting ready to get released and what have you, and it's always fun to see that type of success. So where are people going to be able to find the movie on the 13th?
Yeah, this Tuesday, September 13th, or whenever you're listening to it, it's going to be on Amazon Prime. It's going to be on Vudu. It's going to be on various video-on-demand platforms. So depending on which cable company you have, you should look for it. Dark Exorcism. It'll be on Xbox. It's going to be on DVD, and on the DVD there's a special behind-the-scenes feature with a ton of interview footage from our festival circuit. So if you're interested in hearing all the actors and myself and other people talking about the film on the festival circuit with some clips and some behind-the-scenes stuff, that's on the DVD as a special feature. So yeah, you'll be able to. I mean, and iTunes, I also believe. So pretty much it's going to be widely available. So whatever mechanism the kids are using today to watch their media content, you should be able to pull it up and find it and stream it or rent it or download it.
Excellent. What else do you have? What do you have going on after this as a filmmaker?
I'm gonna go back. I'm at a place where I have some scripts, some of the projects I was working on before this film came about. I'm gonna go back to. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I'm gonna try a couple of different things. It's been really interesting. This film being my third film and being so different, I'm kind of in it feels almost like you kind of go full circle. And I'm really jazzed about now, having had a little break, to go back out and do something. And then you're also kind of torn of like, you go back and do the kind of stuff you were doing before. Do you, I would genuinely love, because of some of the circumstances of making this film were beyond my control. I would love another shot at this genre on my own terms completely. Or do I do something completely different, and just swing the bat and see where it lands. So I have a couple of different things that I'm working on, but I don't know exactly which one is going to hatch first or which direction I'm going to go in. So
okay, well, whichever direction you go in, I'm definitely curious to see where you go from here. Thank you very much.
You'll definitely get to see it. I'll tell you that much.
So this is his third film after Around and Things I Don't Understand. The movie is Dark Exorcism. It is going to be on demand and on DVD on Tuesday, September 13th. And it's been a pleasure to talk to him about this as the release comes up. This is writer-director David Spaltro. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man. It was great.
I'd like to thank writer-director David Spaltro once again. It was really great to talk to him and put a voice to emails and to a face that I've seen on social media over the years. I even though it was primarily because of Dark Exorcism, I do highly recommend his other films as well, Around and Things I Don't Understand. And especially if you're like me and like to watch horror movies during October and during the Halloween time, I would certainly recommend adding Dark Exorcism to your playlist. It's a really effective horror film. It's a really effective character-driven horror film, which is something that is rarefied air now for horror cinema, but nonetheless is something you see every once in a while, and I feel like Dark Exorcism is one of the better examples of that in the past few years. So thank you very much, David, for agreeing to the interview, and I hope to have more filmmaker interviews for you guys in the future. For now, this is Brian Scuttle, and thank you very much for listening to the Sonic Cinema podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Sonic Cinema podcast. My name's Brian Scuttle, and thank you